Yu-Gi-Oh is without a doubt one of, if not the most iconic TCG out right now, with some of the success coming from the anime and manga, and of course, the absolute juggernaut that is the card game itself. Yu-Gi-Oh has secured itself almost perfect TCG, keyword being almost. Despite the huge success in its heyday, Konami had decided it would be a good idea to just wing it the last, So for whatever reason, Konami either doesn't know how or want to improve their game, and today, I think it'll be a good time to list some ideas I've heard from the Yu-Gi-Oh community, even a few from myself to see where we can go from here. And with that, thank you for stopping by. Now before we continue, I want to address this now before we get there. I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh since its early days, but I didn't know how to properly play into the late GOAT era Edison format days. I would also like to say, my personal skill level, I'm at a raw yellow level if this was a dual academy, or for an easy comparison, I'm not asked to Yugioh. So if my take comes off as scrubby to you, congrats, you're part of today's subject in the other half of this video. So was that clear? Let's begin. So what made Yu-Gi-Oh so special for a lot of people besides the anime, of course, was the fun back and forth interaction in every duel you would compete in. So many duels from the beginning era to the end of the XZ era where a ton of players were interacting and engaging with every aspect of the duel. However, over time, Yu-Gi-Oh slowly, then very rapidly, became almost a parody of itself. And there's tons and tons of proof to support the frustration and complaints of both old and new duelists, so let's go over those. The first one being speed. We'll be talking about is just that. Most card games lasted way longer than they do today. It's almost night and day different when comparing the speed. And the first year Yu was rough. It was so slow, most games at that point were won by whoever got their boss monster out first, which most of the time was stall for Blue Eyes, or get lucky and play Summon Skull before the opponent played their Blue Eyes, since to summon Blue Eyes you needed 2, but Skull needed 1. And that was early Yu-Gi-Oh! Until the first real era began, and that's the GOAT format, an era so beloved by the community is still being played at locals to this day. See, GOAT is loved so much because it's regarded as peak Yu-Gi-Oh! Due to its speed and its ability to go back and forth with your opponent, where the games are longer but you're still engaged, where outplaying your opponent genuinely feels earned. And GOAT era also introduced a lot of ideas. While some were product of its time, like battle traps and flip effects, but it also gave us fleshed out archetypes, monster effects that actually do something, and, my favorite part, new unique ways to win a duel besides just beating them with a big boss stick. Because as mentioned, before GOAT, it was a race to see who can bring out the boss monster first. Where now in this format, you have different playstyles such as Stun, where that goal is to prevent your opponent's plays from ever getting off the board, Control, where you decide the speed of the duel, and Beat Down B-Stick, which is the old reliable strat again of hit them really hard, this time was more variety to it. Oh, and I have to mention it for my sickos out there, the burn strategy, where you win through effect damage and not battle damage. Now of course, since GOAT was still the early days of Yu-Gi-Oh, some cards were printed with insane effects that could turn duels on their head. So to combat this, Konami made the ban list, and its sole purpose was to keep the speed and integrity of Yu-Gi-Oh in check. Now, besides the Yu-Gi boomers out there who already know this answer, you in the audience, let's play a game. Do you want to take a guess how long the GOAT format actually lasted for? Is it option A, summer 05 to summer 07, option B, summer 04 to fall 05, or C, the summer 05 to fall 05? If you chose C, you're correct. So how does a format that was around for barely a year have such a strong presence to this day? And the answer is simple. GOAT had a little bit of everything for everyone. And at the time, Yu-Gi-Oh was its easiest to learn for both casual and competitive duelists, but it still needed some improvement, which it got in the next big format. That format being the Edison format. Or for the sake of the video, we're just gonna call it the Synchro days. Synchro days, in my personal opinion, is the best era of Yu-Gi-Oh! It's the GOAT format, but with better quality of life updates to the game, with more ways to play the previous mentioned strats, and introduced a new summoning mechanic, the aforementioned Synchro summoning mechanic. See, in the past, the only other extra deck summoning mechanic was the fusion summoning. The side deck was called the fusion deck once upon a time, but with the introduction of Synchros, it was then changed to the extra deck we know today. Now, if you didn't know how to fusion summon, you needed the right materials in your hand or the field, and the fusion card that can perform said fusion itself. And with everything ready, you can can now perform the fusion summon. So for the cost of a really strong extra deck summon, you need usually at least 3 cards to summon, and those 3 had to be very specific for said boss monster too. But with this new summoning mechanic Synchro summoning, all you needed to do was have a special monster called a tuner and a regular monster to now summon a Synchro monster, so no fusion card needed. But the way this summon mechanic is balanced, if the Synchro monster you needed was a level 8, your tuner and regular monster levels combined needs to equal the level of your Synchro monster. So if you're Synchro summoning again a level 8, you can go for a 2+6, a 3+5, or a 4+4, or if somehow you can do it, you can do a 7+1. As long as it equals the exact level and you can't go over like rituals the exact level, you can now Synchro summon. Now to those who don't like or never Synchro summon, that mechanic sounds pretty easy to do, right? Well, it was easier said than done. In the early days, it wasn't that easy yet, since you only get 1 normal summon per turn, and there wasn't a lot of options of monsters that can special summon themselves so easily outside of a few. So the way Konami fixed it was to start releasing more monsters that can special summon themselves easier, or more spells and traps that can help with Synchro strategy. And at its peak of it all, Edison gave us another true strategy, and that's the combo playstyle. See, as mentioned, Konami decided to release more monsters to special summon themselves and cards that can help the Synchro summon mechanic. Well, what if there was a secret third option where they decided to release cards that did both at the same time? Like say, I don't know, a monster was the effect of if you special summon a different monster from the graveyard, you can then special summon this monster from your hand. Then if the same monster from your hand was used for a Synchro summon, you can special summon 2 tokens that can be used for more plays and extended combos. And that's just one of the more tame cards from that era. Over time, however, more and more cards began to flood the scene and the game started gaining at an alarming rate. To combat this, some duelists experimented with other playstyles that were given a boost alongside Synchros and combo decks, some being a full lockdown deck with cracked floodgates and amazing battle traps, to FTK burn decks, but of course, nothing lasts forever, and the Synchro era lasted for about 4 years. After the Synchro days, we have the next era, and that's the XYZ days. Where just like the Synchro era, we got another summoning mechanic since Konami saw the money it was making with it, so they decided to go for double or nothing with the XZ mechanic. Now to improve from the last summoning mechanic, Konami decided it would be a good idea to instead get rid of the whole X plus Y equals boss monster. Instead of that, we got X squared, meaning to use a new summoning mechanic, all you needed were 2, sometimes more than that, monsters of the same level, which even way more easier to do than the previous Synchro way. Now the kicker is some of these new XZ boss monsters power crept the hell out of the previous meta, and some styles were just left in the past waiting for the next wave of support. Some were so strong, this was the point in the game where staple battle traps were tossed to the side for traps to help XZ summoning, or trap cards that have better lingering graveyard effects, where you get more value out of 1 card, which in my opinion, that's kind of a good thing. It's natural for a game to speed up the process of its game to match with the times and keep a fresh feeling to the overall Yugioh experience, but it does start to show Konami's first major issue with their handling of the game. Konami seems to drop meta-changing cards and fewer support for older cards to stay relevant and call it a day. They only update the ban list ever so often, and only cards they deem problematic, or sometimes if enough players come forward with toxic or insane deck lockout strategies. Now on to yet another new summon mechanic, because just like that, after 4 years we're back to the new one. We're talking about is regarded as one of the worst thing to hit Yu-Gi-Oh! Besides scalpers, of course. Now I have to say one of, because I personally don't think this is what killed the game, but it was the first real heavy hit to it, and that's the pendulum era. See, with this mechanic, it does something really unique where it's a new summoning mechanic changed the game in a bad way. And the way it did this was you needed 2 pendulum monsters and you put them in a new pendulum zone at the time, or later in the last 2 spell slots, trap card zone. And these new monsters would have something called a pendulum scale, which can range from 0 to 13. And whatever the 2 skills you put down are, you can summon anything. anything in between from your hand or your extra deck if that card was summoned properly and then was destroyed. So if your skills were something like 2 and 9, you could summon as many monsters you wanted from the levels 3 through 8 and just go wild with that. Now, if you recall, the last 3 summoning mechanics were balanced around the fact that despite new support for them and better cards printed out for them, they were still in check because you needed multiple monsters on the field, and that takes time to set up and time throughout the duel to pull off. But with pendulum cards, man, you could do absolute dummy plays in a single turn if you open with a crack hand. You have 2 level 4s with really good XZ effect if you use for XZ summoning, so one of them can't special summon itself easily and have no form of protection to last your next turn. No problem. Do this real cool thing called cheating, and you too can ruin somebody else's enjoyment in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's the type of stuff you can pull off with pendulum decks at the time. Pendulum cards in themselves really aren't super strong, but when they do work, whew, man, it's like a ritual deck. Ritual decks have always been balanced around the fact that they take a lot of setup and a lot of time to pull off and very niche and specific ways of playing around them. But when they pull it off, they're damn near unbeatable. Think about Dryton Herald. Think about Herald Fairy. I think there's a current ritual meta going on right now. I can't pronounce his name, but I think it's a reptile one. Now, I can't be too harsh on the Pendulum era, since we did get crazy support for the previous summon mechanics, and whole archetypes dedicated to those said mechanics. But the issue cannot be ignored at this point in the game, and that is Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a terrible speed and power creep problem. Konami just cannot stop themselves from releasing cards that are crazy strong and completely overshadow the older cards, while also not addressing the issue of how to actually maintain a new card with older playstyles. Now, best to move on to hopefully the last summon mechanic, and that's link summoning. So Konami, in their infinite wisdom, decided, both fix the speed of the game and the absolute oppressive hold combo and extra deck monsters have on the game at this current time of 2017. That's when they were released, by the way. Let's make another summon mechanic where this time, all you need is any monster. Levels no longer needed most of the time. Just simply play any monsters and boom, new ways to climb into even crazier boards than before. But the kicker is we're gonna make a new monster zone called the Extra Zone, and all extra deck monsters up until the new ruling have to go there on summon, and you can only summon one non-link extra deck monster. But if your deck can link climb well enough, you can get better and stronger link cards than the previous extra deck cards you can summon to any zone they point to. So if your extra deck monster has the 3 arrows pointing to your board, you can now have 3 extra deck monster plus the link. And this was Konami's idea of fixing the problem. Needless to say, the summon mechanic was met with understandable disappointment across the board from everyone. Older fans thought this summon mechanic was too much to learn at first. Most, if not all, competitive players despised it on release due to their decks being straight up guttered by the new ruling with the extra monster due to the existence of the extra zone now, forcing them to either play slower or learn the new summoning mechanic. Now, I can go in even further detail about the speed of Yu-Gi-Oh! And when Konami did their irreversible damage to the point of no fixing. Spoilers, it was pendulum and links, but I'm gonna wrap up the speed section so we can move to the next section, and that is the competitive side of Yu-Gi-Oh!
You take this. Something just tells me that it belongs with you.
So you're probably wondering exactly how does the competitive side of Yu-Gi-Oh! Play to the current state of play of the TCG. While it seems that Konami does its own thing when it comes to dropping cards and support for the game, they do keep in mind the balance between casual and pro play when making new cards. But then, by doing so, some cards, some archetypes, lean heavily towards one of 2 ways. One way being, this card kinda works and it helps my favorite archetype now, but it can't really do anything crazy at the moment. And the other way is, wow, this card is straight fucking gas, dog. Now, with that being said, due to the ever-changing speed and meta of the game, some cards become trash or broken overnight. And the problem then becomes the cards that were worth nothing now nearly cost a fortune. And if cards and full decks cost too much to make, both new and semi-competitive players will just drop Yu-Gi-Oh! Altogether. Because ask yourself, if you were a new player in today's climate and you wanted to build a funny haha rogue deck or even older meta decks to get the idea how the game game can be played at higher levels, well, you're met with decks on the lower end costing around 175 to 225 American cheddar, dog. And keep in mind, instead of rogue or older meta decks, you want to play the current meta. I hope you got good credit, because at least for current meta decks, it's around $500. Or at the higher end, it could be up to $1,000. One band for some Yu-Gi-Oh cards, a children's card game for 1K. Now, to be fair to Konami, in recent years, they have decided and attempted to combat this by releasing really strong cards from the past, and this both helps two major issues at once. It does this by lowering the price of said strong cards that are necessary for most decks to run. See Ash, Triple Tactic, Forbidden Droplet, and I think Albaz got a re-release not too long ago. And by making more of the same cards, the value goes down, so even if you don't pull the cards you want, you can buy it later for a now reduced price. However, this still is not enough to combat the issue completely, because for every re-release of good cards for better prices and pulls, it is then met with new stronger cards that are once again crazy strong and real good for the current meta, but if you're not lucky and pull said card you're looking for, boom, back to square one, and your face was paying close to $70 for a single copy of a card. You need 3 for the deck to be consistent, by the way. That's just the new cards. You're completely at the mercy of the Egyptian god themselves if you want to buy a good old card that hasn't been released yet, especially cards that randomly become key cards for current or anti-meta decks. And before I move on from the competitive aspect of the TCG, there's one more issue we can all agree on, and that's being the prize and rewards given to winners. It's just ridiculous at best, and at worst, it's just downright embarrassing. Imagine you practice your ass off every local you can go to. You save and spend your hard-earned money for the best cards for your playstyle, plus the travel fees to other regionals. Then you finally make Champion Series, and through it all, you win the Champion Series of that year, proving at this point in your Yu-Gi-Oh career, you are the new king of games. And to show that, you get a trophy, a game map, and a Nintendo Switch. Oh, and a prize card, which is cool, but considering places 2 through 7 get the same thing minus the prize card of that rarity, to me, if I was a competitive player, especially for years, I would drop the game after a while. With no serious prize, it becomes very off-putting to me, and that's just my viewpoint. If I was competing, I can only imagine how good players feel about this, and with no real plan or goal in mind, other than squeezing all of our bank accounts, Konami seems to keep throwing whatever at the wall to see what sticks. But the wall in question is the player base, and most things they're throwing is fucking grenades. But hey man, maybe the 1000 wave support for dual monster era cards will fix the game. Who knows? Who knows? And I was gonna end the video after that last section, but after doing more thinking, it's not entirely Konami's fault why we're in this mess of low player interactions. I had mentioned multiple times throughout the video the older fans leaving Yu-Gi-Oh due to various reasons listed previously, which all boil down to it's not fun anymore to play. And I can probably guess what you're thinking. Yeah, no duh, this doesn't sound fun. You spent like half an hour saying how much modern Yu-Gi-Oh is in a real bad spot and it's kind of boring. Which to that I'm gonna challenge that thought was a quick two-part question. The question being, are most of the duels you play in a competitive setting like locals, rank mode, or you're testing with your friends their strong decks? And if the answer to that first part was yes, then my second part to that question is, with all due respect, why are you mad at the game when you're the one not matching the energy of the situation at hand? I probably lost a good chunk of y'all right now for even thinking like that, but it's unfortunately true. And to clarify, that question goes both for casual and competitive players, because let's be honest, how many of us would set up a duel room or even call a good few of our friends over to play a few matches just be met by Sweaty Sam running his Fiendsmith Live Twin deck, destroying everyone's whole mood? But on the opposite side of the same scenario, but this time everybody's playtesting stronger decks to see what beats what and see how cards interact with each other, when one of the homies pull up with his 60 card pure Ice Barrier deck with no hand traps and no real good back row remover. Like, look at him, dog. He's playing MST at 1 still. And with both of the scenarios, plus the other million variants of these kind of situations, you can only blame the game so much when you're making poor decisions. So to end this section, I got one more phrase you should try to remember the next time you hang out with friends trying to play test their competitive decks, or they want to play GOATs or anything casual, and that is simply, don't be that guy. Please don't be that guy. And to clarify, if you're new or trying to get into Yu-Gi-Oh, ignore that last bit. Definitely be that guy for a while so you can learn through trial and error. Don't feel bad for not knowing how to play every deck or play decks at certain times. If you have a few decks you like to play them at every chance you get. It's the older, more experienced players I'm talking to with that last bit there. And I think I covered everything about Konami and the player base. But there is one more issue that I can just briefly summarize the whole video with. So think of this like the TLDR section. To sum it up, Yu-Gi-Oh's biggest problem, despite its balancing issue, card issue, how players interact with one another, it's simply just stale. Because at the end of it all, even if you want to play semi-casual like I do on my own, this very YouTube channel you're watching, you're then forced to play 5 hand traps. You can go to Yu-Gi-Oh Master Duel Reddit, you can go to Yu-Gi-Oh Reddit right now, you can go to other YouTubers video section, and you're met with the same things like, oh, this deck is sort of good, I can climb with this, how do I improve? It's gonna be the same answer every time. You want to run 2 Ashes, 2 Ogre Rabbits, or Snow Rabbits, excuse me. Maybe Psy-Frame if your deck can play that well. Use Fiendsmith as an engine. If I have to run into one more Fiendsmith engine, I'm using Fiendsmith and I'm sick of it. I'm using it. Further proving my point. I am forced to play that. Well, I mean, okay, let's calm down. Let's not be too dramatic. Konami's not forcing me to play these cards, but to win, I am forced to play these cards if I want to actually win the game. But again, I guess that circle back to my previous point of I can't get mad because that's the current state of Yu-Gi-Oh. But then let's talk about it. Why is the current state like this? And the short answer is it's boring. It's boring to see the same cards all the time. And while I've heard somebody for the newer generation argue saying it's not fair to people who's been around the block to say, oh, you play the same cards because every meta you play the same cards, which is true. I always ran Heavy Storm when it was legal. I know everybody and their mother ran Pot of Greeting, Chase for Garrity. Yo, I cannot talk. Graceful Charity. Why was I trying to say that backwards? Like everybody and their mom play the same cards for GOAT. Everybody did. If you go to the GOAT format website right now, any of them, I bet you the first top 50 decks are probably gonna be some Turbo Chaos deck or GOAT Warrior. Like you're gonna see a lot of the same cards. The only difference is it still had weight to it. It still felt like it mattered. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you do in this current state, you have 1 or 2 options. Play your full combo out, have a board of 6 negates, floodgates, and 3 hand traps somehow, and graveyard interactions and all this other jazz, and you can play during your opponent's turn. That's that. Or the other option is like, oh man, he negated my key part. I guess I lose. I'm so glad I spent $300+ as mentioned earlier to play this card game for 30 seconds. That's just the short end of it. Yu-Gi-Oh is just simply, it hurts me to say it, but it's true. It's just simply stale. Yu-Gi-Oh is just too stale right now. And while there's been a ton of ideas to fix it, where we suggest more different formats, because I will commit my sin right now, I will confess it, I got into Magic. I love Magic the Gathering. It's simple, it's easy, I understand it. There's a lot I don't understand, but when I see it, it's not hard to get, except for Trample. I get that one, not Trample, Mounts. I don't know how Mount works quite yet, but I'm getting there. But there's a ton of stuff in Magic that's easy to learn, and they have different multiple formats. There's no reason why Yu-Gi-Oh doesn't have a Commander format. There's nothing stopping us from making a new format where we play the decks at full capacity 60, or we can make it 80 for this format alone, and you can play every copy of a card at 1. There's nothing stopping that. There'll be way more variety if you play every card at 1. We already have Time Wizard, I mentioned that earlier, where you play older formats, and people still go back to GOAT and Edison here and there, and I don't know the name for the XZ format. Somebody enlighten me. I don't know if that one ever had a name. Nobody really talks about it, but my point still stands. As a player base, we have to realize part of the problem is us, but at the same time, we're forced to play like this. So I can't be mad at everybody for running staples. Like, oh man, you gotta do what you gotta do. C'est la vie, you know? All we can do is hope and pray it gets better. Whew, I think I covered as much as I can about modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And the many issues it's currently suffering from. Please let me know if I missed anything important. I think I covered as much as I can about modern Yu-Gi-Oh! And the many issues it's currently suffering from. Please let me know if I missed anything important. I'll make sure to do a follow-up. Also, do make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Your boy trying to hit 500 subs for the year ends. It'd be really cool if you help me reach my goal. And with all that being said, I'll see you in the next big video. Peace.